how do you approach teaching a 7-year-old?
So when you're working with really young kids, you have to break things up. You can't just lecture. They have to apply what you're trying to show them. So it might be a simple checkmating pattern at the beginning after you get through learning how the pieces move and things like that. So you chunk the lessons. You show something and then you do something. Kids like to use their hands. They like to get in there and try to do what you're asking them to do. And you have to have fun. You have to keep it fun. It's not like being a drill sergeant and you're trying to make them do certain things. They'll do it on their own, and you incentivize it. You give them prizes when they reach certain achievements. And so you can do that online or you can do that in person.
So I know that there's this concept of openings, there's the middle game, there's in game, there's tactics. Do you kind of start with first just the pieces and some of the basic movements, and do you get to something like an opening where you start teaching them, hey, I think a good coach would tell you, stick to one method. Don't try to vary the methods of your strategy, if you will. Does that make sense?
It does. Different coaches approach this in different ways. I would say that the most common way to teach kids, though, how to play chess is not focusing as much on the opening as the end game. So
Okay.
once you learn how the pieces move, usually the next thing that we teach kids are these checkmating patterns. It might be mate in one. What's the next move that will checkmate the king? And so they're learning. They solve puzzles, or they'll do this over the board in practice, and we'll teach them different checkmating patterns and ways to checkmate the king.
So that kind of, you start with the end and then just work backwards?
Sort of.
Sort of?
Sort of. So you want them to know how the game concludes. You want to know what the end game is. You want to know what the objective is. And it's simpler to understand it when you have less pieces on the board.
Okay.
And so a lot of times, beginner players, their objective is to just capture pieces. They love capturing pieces, and they like lining them up and seeing what they're capturing. But we're trying to keep them focused on checkmating. It doesn't do you any good to capture a bunch of pieces if your opponent is about to checkmate you in 2 moves.
Yeah.
So you want to keep the focus on the end game.
Okay. And, I would imagine kids learn pretty quickly.
They do.
And I'm assuming they surprise you every single time.
Yes.
Right? With how fast they learn. So how quick is it so it sounds like you're starting with just a few pieces, but how soon do you get to the full board and you're talking about white and black and who start offense and defense and who starts, and how fast does that occur?
So that can happen in a month if you're really on an accelerated program. Some schools meet more than once. Some schools meet once a week. You also have other opportunities to just play in the community like we do at Madison Library. We have Monday night chess. And so the more that you practice, that also accelerates learning. And then some kids do this on their own, or they might get on chesskid.com and practice themselves and play other kids and play robots. But they can play in elementary schools, start playing with a full board within a month.
Really? Mm-hmm. Do they immediately want to start competing? Or is it... So I guess there's this aspect, too, of the phase of just kind of the hobby. Hey, I just want to play you. Let's just have a competition versus tournament, which is very different, whether it's time-based or whatever the rule set is. Do a lot of them have that hunger to compete?
Oh, yes, early on. And so some kids really love winning those medals and trophies. Some kids like being at tournaments to hang out with their friends. A lot of motivations there, but some really do like the competitive aspect. And some of our schools will have recreation chess club for the kids who just want to play for fun. And then we have chess teams that teach kids how to compete.